Okay, whoever wants to go first, but I'll introduce this segment at least. So we started this segment because we were living in the virtual world. So we were thinking, what better way than to talk to previous muleys and see what they're doing and what they're up to. One, just to keep in touch with you guys because we miss you all every time you leave, but also just for people looking to see what else is out there. We love this assignment, but we know it'll get to a point where we'll have to leave anyways. So why not see what else is out there, what assignments, and what we can learn from the people that moved on. So Major Zaleski, if you want to go first, kind of get an introduction on yourself.
All right, cool. Yeah, it looks like I lost the nose goes on going second. So yeah, Mike Zaleski. I was in the 22nd. I left back in 2019. I got there in 2015, and I was at Dover prior to that. So I did 2 Dover assignments with a MC-12 deployment right when I got out of pilot training. So I went to Kandahar for 6 months, did that, and then went on to 2 C5M assignments. So I never flew the B model or anything. I was at Laughlin for pilot training, and I went to the academy. And right now I am not currently in Hawaii, but I am stationed in Hawaii at Hickam, flying C-37s. So.
Awesome. Okay, well, can you talk a little about the process of how you found this assignment and what the application process was like for this assignment?
Yeah, I think it's one of those assignments that obviously there's not a ton of openings for it. It's all the white jet DV tours are kind of hard to come by sometimes. So I remember when I was at Dover, we had someone go to the C-40 at Scott. So that was kind of the first time that I actually saw somebody transition and go fly DV aircraft. So that was pretty cool. So I got to talk with him as he transitioned over there, and we kind of moved around the same time, and he happened to fly through Travis when I was there. And so he had us all come out to the jet. There was probably, like 5 or 6 of us that came out and saw him, showed us around and everything. And so it kind of gave me the, that taste of like, hey, this would be cool to do. And so I think it was, after probably 2 years, it was right when, right before Colonel Pollock took over, I started kind of looking at that transition and what I was going to do for my next assignment, because it was going to come up, and who knew if it was going to be 3 years or 4 years there. You just don't know. And so I knew I wanted to be in control of that, and I didn't have a desire to go to pilot training, and I didn't think I wanted to do another coast to coast back to Dover. So I had to find something else. And so I started talking with the boss, the commander, about those options. Started looking on VPC, and when I was at Dover, I already started putting that stuff on my, the dream sheet. What is it? It's VPC now, but before it was whatever that assignment system was, AMS. And then, so I started putting that on there and talking with him, and really talking with the commander was the route to go. And that's kind of how I started that conversation.
Awesome. So then you were talking with Colonel Pollock, I believe, and then he kind of reached out to you and let you know that this was out there. Was there an application process or an interview?
For this one, to get C-37s or C-40s to, now it's just the C-37s at Hickam, but if that C-40s at Scott and C-37s at Ramstein, there is no application or interview. It is completely managed by the commanders and by the functional. So really that portion of it is going to be managed by one, if the commander wants to recommend you, because he has to, put his name out there for it, and he has to talk generally with the other commander at that unit, and then coordinate with VPs or with the functional on making that move, because there's a lot of moving parts in it. Because those squadrons are small, timing is really important, and manpower management and how much flying experience an individual has. So rather than doing an application, the important stuff for that is one, having the reputation and relationship with the commander to have honest conversations about what you want to do and have the flying experience. Because that is even though there is not an application, all that stuff is still reviewed as far as flying experience, and they still do all those bro checks and whatnot. And there have been people who have, come into these assignments off their first assignment, and it kind of snuck their way in there. We have one that's like kind of working right now that the command didn't even know was coming, and it's created a problem for the squadron because he was never an instructor, and that kind of leads into some of the difficulties of the IPSAM because we don't fly as much.
One of my questions was going to be, what's like one thing that you've noticed is kind of like a check mark, like certain hours, just by seeing people coming in, just so people have like kind of an idea of when they'd be ready to apply? Is there something like that besides the one-off who got it there early?
Yeah, it's definitely, you need to have instructor. You have to have that experience. The hours, I don't think necessarily are the most important thing, because they'll pull from all sorts of different career fields. So like we have C-130 guys, and I have, gosh, man, probably 1,500 more hours than he has. But the number of sorties he has is astronomical. And he's an experienced instructor out of the schoolhouse because they, fly a bunch of locals. So, he was still selected based on, all the criteria, even though he had a lot less hours than I did. So I think it's one, having that instructor experience, and having obviously 2 assignments, I think is, essential for going into that. And then, evaluator is not necessary, like by any means. I would say that it's not even necessarily a factor for their selection. They've got plenty of people who weren't evaluators that have come here.
Okay. Next question would be, what is life like there as personal and work life? You talked a little bit about ops tempo not being able to fly much, but if you want to.
Yeah, Hawaii's pretty good. It's not too bad. It's all that, we remember from, flying through Hawaii, going downtown, doing all that stuff. And, I live in the downtown area, not in Waikiki, but right next to it. COVID's obviously, hampered some of that enjoyment and all the things you can go do. But we have really enjoyed the island and it being 80 degrees every day. So it's pretty cool. As far as the squadron goes, that community, it's very different. Like it has been a challenge to be in a squadron that is much older. And, anybody that's above major obviously has gone to school, done all those things. They're, either on command track or towards retirement. And then I am the only person without kids in my squadron, only pilot without kids. And so, well, I'll have to see. We've had like 2 or 3 new people show up that I haven't met yet because of COVID, but it is that community that we had at Travis is not here, like whatsoever. And it sucks. It is something that you have to know going into, like that it's going to be different. So Caitlin and I have, had to rely on ourselves and hanging out with each other. And we'll see people here and there, but they got to deal with kids and drive across the island because most of them live like right near the base and stuff like that. So
rely on some crews coming in.
Yeah. Whenever you guys come through, I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm going. As far as like in the squadron, it's great. Like we have really like everybody that's a CGO or FGO, and we're pretty much all we have like 1 or 2 captains now. The rest are predominantly majors, but it's all like my time frame guys. We all get along really great. Everybody's a bro. We have a good time. We play foosball. Like still, do our work. Go home. It's Hawaii, so you don't work till 7 p.m. or anything like that. And like that's great. The flying part is really, it's a cool mission. You get like I took the NSA director, to a bunch of conferences, who's, also the Cybercom commander. I took the Space Force commander, or the new chief of Space Force, whatever he's calling himself. But we took him, back from DC to to Colorado and back. And, you know, you get to do these major summits or high impact missions. So it's pretty fun doing that. And the airplane's phenomenal. I mean, it's a Gulfstream, it's a G5. It has its issues, just like any other airplane. It is actually kind of old, if you could believe it. There are things in the C5 that are newer. You wouldn't think. And then I would say probably the worst thing is hours. Like, I don't need more hours, like, for, you know, going to the airlines or doing whatever I'm going to do next, but I want to fly. Like, I enjoy flying. In the first year, I have 120 hours. So, and that is also why I think it is important for people to have hours and to have been instructors and come into these airplanes, because what happens is I won't fly for almost a month. And we don't have a sim. So I can't go hop in the sim here and get a couple of locals and then move on and be like, all right, cool. Yeah, I get back in the jet. I can start it right up. Like, I flew a local probably like 3 months after I got here. And I was with my buddy, Bill, that I went through pilot training with, was here. And we got in the jet and I had studied, done all this like prep. I forgot how to start the engines. And I was like staring at the panel. Like, I just needed the first step. Like, and he was like, dude, this. I was like, oh, and then, you know, went through the whole flow and everything, because we do a little bit more flows than checklist response. And if you don't have that experience, or that, like, where you can get it back quick, it's kind of hard. And there's no room for like just sitting around screwing stuff up. Like, the dude walks on the plane and we're starting the number 2 engine, like, and you're taxiing out in like 5 minutes. So that's big stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Would you, having known what you know now, would you have done anything differently as far as wanting this assignment, or any regrets?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's a pretty great assignment. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I would do anything different. I do miss the 22nd and the people there. Like, the grass is, like they say, greener sometimes on the other side, but sometimes you miss portions of it.
Definitely, for sure. Do you have any advice for people looking for their next assignment after the 22nd?
Yeah, fly. Be like, even if you do, like, sometimes you can't stay in the squadron. Like, I'm not in the squadron right now. I'm ready to come back. Make sure you still engage with the squadron and fly. Like, if you become the person who just works like in an office around base, like, one, you're not going to be a part of like the core group of people within the squadron. And that, I think, was one of the most like valuable things that I've had in the Air Force, was the people within the squadron and the fun I had flying and doing the mission. So don't disappear. That I would have never gotten here to the assignment that I wanted if I went out and disappeared. I probably could have got a staff job that I wanted. That's just me being honest. Yeah, and I didn't want that. So go after what you want and work hard and say yes and fly and be a bro. If you're not a bro, you're just shooting yourself and you're out. I mean, not that anybody's malicious about it, but it's the way it is. Like, there are people who are not bros and you don't want to be around them.
Definitely. So once you left the 22nd, and you're at your current assignment, how soon did you start already planning your next move? Looking at what you wanted to do next, having done multiple moves, like, when would you say is a good time to start planning your next move and being in the talks about your next assignment?
I would say about a year after getting there. So that first year, you obviously want to like really focus on being good at your job and being fully engaged in the squadron. But what's going to happen is they're going to start looking at your next job that you're going to go move to. And, you know, that plays a factor, especially if it's your third assignment. or even second assignment, like if you're moving up, like, hey, now I'm an instructor, obviously you're going to start moving into the instructor shops and stuff like that. But if you're being positioned into jobs that don't fit what you desire next, like you need to speak up. So like I'm doing wing innovation right now and I'm going to come back to the squadron, and I had to be honest with them and say, hey, I want back in the squadron. I don't want to go do a wing job, and I want to fly and become an AC and focus on that. And told them my next desire is either, I'm going to go to the reserves, and I want to either go to go to one of the C5 units, going to go to P's for the 46, because that's where I'm probably going to eventually end up for retirement. And, or I might go to the 89th. And so, opening up those conversations, about 2 years out. So I got to, start making those choices.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, I got one more thing.
Okay.
If you have not done a digital flight tracker and like Millkeep or something like that, you better do it. Like, I'm dead serious, and you need to track everything you got, because the Air Force is not going to do it, and it's going to be a whole lot harder when you are transitioning to your next job if you don't have that.
You're talking about hours?
Yeah, your hours, your 781s. Like, I know, like, it's hard to keep a 781 or get a hold of one sometimes, but do a digital tracker and keep all your records. Huge.
Thank you.
Do you have a recommendation for which one we should use?
I recommend Millkeep, because that's what I use. The nice thing about them is they can take your harm record and they can transcribe that into a Excel doc, put it into their system. So you just scan it, they'll take it, they charge $200, they'll convert it into a digital, and then you can, obviously keep the Air Force records because they're not doing harm anymore. So you have to keep your SARM record and print that every year. But then you can manually go in and upload each mission that you're on. And then, you can even mark whether it's a combat sortie or combat support. You can do all that kind of stuff. And then, because then if you get to your airlines like time frame, if you're going to start putting in for that, it helps convert all those numbers into what they want to see. So
awesome. Thank you.
And that's MIL Keep?
Yeah, I think it's MIL Keep. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Major Zaleski.
Yeah, no problem.
Please stick around. We'll have Major Bayman, and then we'll open questions at the end.
How's the audio on this? I've got just like an earbud in. Can you guys hear okay?
Yes, we can hear great.
Awesome, sweet. I'll just go through my quick introduction. And I know most of you guys there. It's good to see a bunch of familiar names, but a bunch of you guys are being tools and not putting your camera on. So
Cue turning the camera on.
The reason why I'm in blues today is because I suck at fantasy football. So in my league, not only is there money on the line, but each week's loser has to show up to work in blues. And my team is garbage. So I've had to wear blues on more than one occasion. Not proud of it. But anyways, that's the reason why. But the one good thing about being a reservist is I can drink at 10 in the morning. In case you guys are looking for a good Irish whiskey, Proper 12. So that's what I'm
Quick
drinking
plug.
today. Yeah, it's super smooth. Anyways, so I'm an ex-muley, as everybody else is here too, or all the guest speakers. And just a quick run through my career. Went to school at UC Davis, just down the street. Aeronautical mechanical engineering, ROTC over at Sac State. So I was one of the crosstowners. Got a pilot slot to Columbus, Mississippi. Did that for a little bit. Got my last choice out of assignment night. I became a FAPE. So I stayed in Mississippi for 5.5 years. Jeff, are you still on? Love you, buddy. So it ended up being an amazing assignment. It absolutely was not what I wanted, but ended up being one of my favorite assignments and hands down the coolest mission I've had a chance to be a part of in the Air Force. And then on assignment night 2.0, actually got my first choice, worked my ass off while I was at Columbus and got my actual first choice, which is C5s. And I was kind of parlaying that strategically to start at Dover and then come to Travis to finish out my career. So went to Dover in 2014, was there for 3 years, did various jobs like current ops, group wing exec, commanded AFB. It was a great assignment, became an instructor pilot while I was there, and then did the coast to coast thing here to Travis. So I was on active duty here at Travis for about 3 years in the 22nd. Started as an ADO, did a 6-month deployment to the AMD, and then came back for chief of standing bow, and that's kind of where I finished my time. So I think, and most of you guys know that I didn't leave that long ago.
But you'd be
and-
surprised, we've been having a lot of new people come in too.
Yeah, and I did notice a couple of maybe a couple of names that I was like on the way out, just as you guys were on the way in. So
Definitely.
and now I'm a reservist, so I'm now part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone always talks about going reserves, but I don't think a lot of people actually know the levels to reserve. I remember when you were talking about what you're going to be doing in the reserve, that was like the first time I actually heard what an art was. So if you kind of want to break down what the reserves, like the different levels to it, so people can kind of get an idea of really what the reserves are, besides just saying, oh, I'm going to go reserves.
Yeah, and I'll kind of start like how I got here, and then I can talk about like the different flavors on there. So, I mean, obviously you can commission and go straight into the reserves. That's like probably the most natural transition. And I'd say like maybe a half the squadron on the officer side kind of went that route. I did the Palace Chase program. So that allows you to get out of your active duty service commitment up to 1 year. Well, it's up to 1 year early is kind of the biggest I've ever heard. Typically it's around 3 to 6 months early from your active duty service commitment. And when I transitioned to reserves, it was like maybe, I think it was like 5 months or something like that. And that process is a nightmare. It's just like anything in the Air Force. You're the first person who's ever PCS. You're the first person who's ever Palace Chased. Like it sucks, but what really helps you through that process is just latch onto somebody who just did it in front of you, and then they'll help pull you through the system because it's pretty awful. But when I transitioned to the reserves, there's kind of like low, medium, and high in terms of like involvement. So a lot of people are traditional reservists, TRs, and that's the weekend warrior, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. And that's kind of the minimum, but at the end of the day, like you're a C5 crew member, so you can kind of do a lot more than that if you want, and pick up missions. And then a step up from that is kind of what I'm doing. I'm an art, so I'm kind of a civilian, GS-13, which is good because I've got a regular paycheck that I can count on every single month. GS-13 pay, which is not bad. And then on the other side, I can kind of plus up my income by working military statuses. And I can, maybe work 2 statuses a day, a civilian day for the first half of the day, and then go fly a night local, get paid some military statuses on top of that. And then the full up, like maximum involvement is AGR. And that's like, you're straight up like you're on active duty. Like your healthcare is the same as active duty. Your retirement, like vesting toward the active duty retirement's the exact same. It's the full active duty paycheck. And so those are kind of the different flavors. And everybody's always super concerned about money when they're making that transition. And my recommendation is have 6 months of savings of just whatever your operating income is for your household. Like just save 6 months of it. You're not going to need it, but that's like worst case scenario. And then if you're a TR, you might need to use some of that extra income while you get that civilian job, just to kind of transition things out. If you're an art, for me, it's about a 20% pay cut from active duty. And then if you're able to roll into a position, it's full up what you were making before. So yeah, if anybody wants to talk like deep dive into numbers, I'm more than happy to do it. The biggest thing, like right now, I make more like on paper, but my tax liability is out of control. So a lot of it gets taken away due to taxes.
So how
yeah.
did you learn a lot about the different, like when you were looking at going reserves, how did you kind of decide which one you wanted to do? What was available? How did you learn more about what you were kind of signing up for?
Yeah, I think the best way to learn is to talk to people who are in those shoes. So like if you want to be that person, just find that person and talk to them. Because there's so many different flavors and so many ways you can slice it. Like mine was relatively seamless because I'm still I'm still a pilot. But you could also become a reservist and have a job that's not flying related at all. And so like while I could push you to the virtual MPF or to MyPERS. There's a lot of information on there, but it's not going to really make a lot of sense unless you're talking to somebody who's like in those shoes. So if you're interested in a unit, for me, it's like the transition's about a 2-year long process, because that first year is kind of meeting people, researching units, kind of rushing the frat, like getting to make those professional contacts. And then that second year is all the administrative, like actually physically getting a verbal like hire, and then going through the HR process, which is
Hey,
just
what's
very
up?
lengthy.
I was looking for someone to help me with. I'm trying to turn my EPR into like one of those binders. They
Figure out
say
how
I
to
turn.
mute him. 1 second.
Mhm.
Okay, we're good to go. Sorry, Major Raven.
So there's so many, everybody's being an asshole in the room around me. There's so many different flavors. So my best advice is to find somebody who's close to what you want, and then have them mentor you.
Definitely. So you decided that you wanted to go reserves at Travis. How did you reach out to them? Did they have like a representative, or did you shoot an email their way?
Do so whichever, like you can really just cold call the unit, and they'll kind of direct you to wherever you need to be. Like in our squadron, we've got 2 people who they're like the hiring people, and there's a Gmail address that you can send a quick email to, or you can just call them up. And then once you get in touch with that kind of individual, they're going to help, say, hey, I need like your resume and these things from your record, like maybe flying history, OPRs, whatever. They'll kind of review things there, and you'll probably start meeting some other people. Just hang out at the squadron, go to lunch. I mean, for here at the 312, like we fly with each other all the time. So if you're interested in coming over, just like we'll just get you on a local or fly on a mission. That's the best way to meet people and make friends. And then once you've kind of like gotten through that process, then they'll set up an actual like interview date and whatnot. So each unit's a little bit different. So that's why I say kind of just cold call the unit. They'll kind of direct you where you need to be.
Definitely. So can you talk about what the flying is like, mission versus active duty in the 22nd and the 312th, kind of what you've noticed big differences?
Yeah, you can say no. That's the biggest difference. And it's hard to like describe how much that means to you when you like, for 12 years, I've never been able to say those words. No, like those 2 letters, like were not part of my vocabulary. And it's really empowering when you finally have that first moment where like something important in your life is going on and you don't have to just blow it off because you have to fly some mission. The first time when this happened was when we were evacuating our neighborhood. And I'm just like remembering on active duty, like I was actually supposed to be leaving on a mission like in a day. And like, here's my neighborhood's getting evacuated. And I'm like, okay, Jillian, you got it. I'll come back. Hopefully the house doesn't burn down. But it was, that was like my active duty brainwashing. And then I was talking to some guys here and they're like, no, just like come off the mission. You've got life going on. Like, we'll either find another body, and if we can't, we'll just delay the mission a day. Like it's weird to like live in that world where you can say no. It's nice. Now I'm also going to talk to the other side where it's frustrating, because I remember very recently being the active duty crew who has to pick up a mess. And now I've been the reserve crew who's left a mess for active duty pickup. And it's a different world over here, because a lot of the guys here are part-timers. So if they run out of pay statuses, they're not getting paid. And if they're not getting paid, they're not working. And so it's a lot of times it's frustrating when a reserve crew leaves its transit jet in the middle of the system and active duty has to go pick it up. But like imagine yourself in that scenario where you're halfway around the planet and you're not getting paid anymore. So there's a lot of like different incentive structures and a different like decision making over here when it comes to that. But I'd say like right now, like I probably flew like one trip a month and probably a local a week. Like flew quite a bit, even though I was like running Stand-About. Over here, I fly really as much or as little as I want. So I fly a local a week because I actually do enjoy flying. And I flew a trip last month, but it just reminded me how painful C5 missions are. So I might it might be a while till I pick up my next trip. I got a baby on the way too, so it's nice. I don't have to worry about like, I can just stay home, like, and that's totally fine. As a full-time employee, as an art, like my job is to run the squadron and keep it afloat so that the TRs can come in, have everything taken care of, and go on a trip. So like my job really is to just keep the operations running here at the squadron. So I fly just for fun, which is great. That's the way flying should be. It shouldn't be because you have to. It's because you want to.
Definitely. Within the reserves, is it easy to maybe let's say you're in art now, but you're interested in going active duty, AGR. Is it easy to try to apply for that, or can you kind of level down to being a TR? Is there easy crossflow, or is it kind of like this is what you
Easier to go
contract?
down than it is to go up. So AGR positions are very rare. We only have a very small handful in the squadron, and so those are super hard to get. And it's almost unheard of that you can go off the street straight into an AGR position. It happens, and it depends. Like when the airlines were like hiring and like nobody was flying for the reserves, like there were AGR positions available. Now the pendulum swung the other way, so all the AGR positions are full because it's the best pay and best benefits. And so I'd say it's harder to level up. It's really easy to level down. So what's nice about my gig right now is like I'm a civilian, and if I get another job offer, let's say an airline calls me up and hires me, I just have to give the Air Force 2 weeks notice and I can go do that, which is not like active duty. Like it's really difficult to separate from active duty. Having just done it, it was an absolute nightmare. It takes a lot of time, but the art is like the sweet spot. It's like I could, if I don't want to go to the airlines, I can just wait around for an AGR position and get that. Or if I want to go to the airlines, then I can just quit this job, become a TR, go to the airlines. So it's really it's the best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Definitely. That's what it sounds like. For transitioning, maybe, so you're in the 312th now, but let's say you wanted to go to Pease, like Major Zaleski, is it easy to try to move within the reserve? Do reserve commanders kind of talk to each other?
They do. So I don't know if it's easier or harder than active duty. I'd say once you're a reservist, it probably is easier to like move between units, especially on base. Like if I want to go over work in the OSS, so easy. If I wanted to go work for the med group, so easy. What's difficult is going from a C5 to a KC-46 unit, like, or if I wanted to go to the 709, like I just need to like make some contacts over there, make some friends, commander to commander. I'm at Dover, pretty easy. What's difficult is when there's a training bill associated with it because the reserves are super poor, and Congress is always taking money from the reserves first. So when you have to retrain into another airplane, that's a big bill for the reserves to pay. So that's a little more difficult to do, but definitely not impossible. Because at the end of the day, if there's a vacancy in that unit and they need it to be filled, and you're willing to do the work, they'll hire you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know you've only been there for a couple of months, but would you have done anything differently? Maybe the process, the application process, or learning more beforehand?
I don't think I would have done anything differently. So like, I mean, I kind of had this recurring nightmare of when I was in ROTC and like the reserve recruiter came and like, where they're like, hey, you can just come join the reserves. Like, don't do the active duty thing. Just come join us. And like, I have a nightmare. Like it's about once a month where I'm like, man, why did I not pay attention? Because guys, I don't want to oversell it, but life is amazing over here. It really is. It's like all your wildest dreams can come true. So would I do anything over again? No, because I really appreciate how good life is over here. Because being on active duty, kind of in the trenches with everybody, it really makes you value things a lot more. And not to knock on some of the babies, but there are some people who just came straight in the unit and they've lived this very cush life, very comfortable, and never had to sacrifice anything and could always say no and like have this amazing personal life and never, and then the things that they complain about it's like mind-boggling, and I'm like, oh, this is just a normal C5 mission, like it's fine. But people like lose their shit if it's not a Marriott like autograph collection. So rich people problems. So I wouldn't do anything differently because the active duty part of my career really gave me an amazing paycheck and a lot of experience, and it's made me so grateful for how things are in the squadron because things are amazing. People here are awesome, and it really is great. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people in the 22nd looking for their next assignment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say like be strategic. So if you've talked to me or heard me just like ramble when I'm drunk, I'll often say like my career was just kind of a jellyfish. I was just sort of floating through the system and from assignment to assignment without a lot of direction and whatnot. And to that level, I kind of did because I was never going to step on somebody else so I could get what I wanted. But at the end of the day, I was always very, very strategic with like, where do I want to be and where am I going? and be transparent. So I'd say that those two things: be strategic, be transparent. So I never kept a secret when I was working for the wing commander at Dover Air Force Base that I was strongly considering becoming a reservist and separating in like 4 years. You know, I didn't keep that a secret from him, and he didn't fire me. And it also hopefully didn't come to any surprise when I made the decision. But like being strategic involves like walking through doors. And you want to always have as many doors open as possible. And that's why I never said no to an opportunity. I didn't want to become a wing exec, but I did it because it opened up a bunch of doors. But part of the strategy is like, you have to walk through doors. You can't just leave them all open. Like, figure out what you want to do, go get it. And so I'd say that that's probably like my advice of like how to get where you want to go. And like, to be honest, like the Air Force has like really well-worn roads to like get to where you want to be. So you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Just find the guy you want to be or the gal you want to be and figure out how they can get it. Do the same thing. But also I think there is an opportunity like to be bold and to go off the beaten path. And like, that's part of your strategy too. And just talk to your commander and be like, I don't want to do the same thing, like assignment, UPT, staff, command. I don't want to do that. I want to do something else. That's part of your strategy, and just be transparent with it. So that's my advice to all the guys.
That's awesome advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. I'll open it up for questions if people want to have more directed questions towards the reserve life or DV airlift. Now is your chance.
Hey, Major Bateman, I got a question for you. So first question is, as an art, it's kind of like a nebulous to me because I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that like your time doesn't count towards your like active duty retirement time unless you're on orders. How does that work?
So while I've increased my flexibility, becoming an art, I am now sacrificing those. Each day you work on active duty is a day toward that active duty retirement. When I become an art, I'm opening up more doors. So now I'm progressing toward a reserve. I can go toward a reserve retirement when I retire at like 65. I can collect, or I can also work toward a federal retirement. So, or I can still work toward an active duty retirement. So becoming an art actually creates more options for you. There's 3 different ways you can retire versus if you're active duty, there's only one way to do it. If you're a TR, there's only one way to do it. You're working toward that reserve retirement. But if you're an art, you can kind of also open up the federal retirement system. So any GS employee is, vesting into this thing, and depending on my military time, I can transfer all those years into the reserve retirement system. So when I get closer to retirement age, I can start running those numbers and decide like, hey, should I pick up some orders and really try to get that active duty retirement, or should I just be happy with my federal retirement? So it's a bit of a choose your own adventure. It provides a lot of flexibility. But you're right. Like when I'm in October, I took MPA orders. So that's active duty money. I'm on active duty orders, and so every day, those 31 days, all that counts towards my active duty retirement. But I was also at the exact same time collecting my civilian paycheck the whole time. So I was making tons of money in October, and all those days in October was also counting toward my federal retirement as well. So there's a lot of ways you can game the system over here.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Thanks.
Yeah. Did that answer? That help?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm not in my retirement window either. But it's nice to know that you have 3 options that you could choose from. If to like, hey, I want to do this way or this route. But that's good to know.
And the reserves really provide max flexibility for like whatever your game plan is, because you can kind of change tracks as often as you want, put eggs in different baskets. Yeah.
That was a good question. Thanks, Jeffrey.
And that's an overly simplistic answer because it is kind of complicated. Yeah.
This is probably a dumb question, but Mike, do you have to wear blues?
I don't. Paul Zampini does. No, we wear, if we are going to mill fields, we wear a flight suit. And then if we are going to go international, then we'll wear a suit. So just so that we're not out in the environment, because depending on where you're at, you could be somewhere you don't want to be seen in, you know, a flight suit. And it's interesting. Somebody brought it up, like, why don't we? Why do you guys wear suits? And it was like, I guess it was one of the staff members of the general, and like, why aren't you wearing a flight suit or, you know, uniform? And it's like, well, I don't have a security detail that's armed or a host nation national security detail that's protecting me. I'm just walking around like, you know, any Joe Schmo. So yeah, I don't want to be in uniform. But the 89th will wear blues when they fly their stateside missions. I think they wear suits overseas as well, but I can't remember.
Do they provide money for your suits?
I did. I got a one-time stipend for buying a suit. Yeah, it was like $400 or something like that. I have yet to wear one. we go Korea, Japan, and to DC a lot. Or like we'll pick up like 89th missions where we'll go to DC and then fly around CONUS and bring people to DC.
I just thought of this. Do you want to talk about where you live in Hawaii versus maybe some other people, or where it's common to live in Honolulu?
Yeah, a lot of people. There's a lot of people live on base, and then there's a lot of non-military housing, pseudo contract military housing that's right outside the base that just doesn't have a gate. So most, I would say 85% of the people, like 90, live in one of those two. There's a couple of people that I know that live on the windward side of the island, which is really nice. If I were to live in a house, that's probably where I would go. I live in Kaka'ako, which is just west in between the base and Waikiki. So it's like a 10-minute drive through traffic and everything to Waikiki, or like a 40-minute walk or something like that. And then it's more where everybody like lives. Like there's a bunch of high rises that are there. So like I'm on the 39th floor of an apartment building. So they have a bunch of really big buildings there. And it's right. I'm like probably a 5-minute walk to the beach. Yeah. So it's not bad.
Sounds rough.
Yeah. It's tough. A lot of breweries and beaches. So it's nice.
I'll give it a couple more seconds for second questions. But I really appreciate you both coming on to talk about this. We've recorded this as well, so people that weren't here can go back and watch this and learn more about your guys' assignments and what else is out there. And this was super helpful. So thank you both so much.
Yeah, and if there's one last thing for me, like Drew mentioned it, like, follow that person who did what you want to do. So as you're watching people, like if it's going to the reserves, like, who did I watch? I watched Aaron Klein, like, oh, who did I watch in my like career? Like, hey, who do I want to be like? Who is that person? If they're my buddy, let me talk to them and see, how they do it, get their recommendations, get their career advice. Follow those people that you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And stay in touch, because like you never know when your life changes and you're going to need to make that phone call and be like, hey man, I want to join your unit. Just stay in touch with people. I mean, it's great when you're on active duty in your professional career, but like personally, life is so much more fulfilling if you just kind of keep in touch with all those people that you admire. Because we're all here to help each other. Like if any of you guys need any help, letter of recommendation, like a phone call to somebody, like whatever it is, like you can come to Mike, you can come to me. We're going to help you out.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I got a question for you. What would you say is the biggest difference between the 89th and where you're at, besides Hawaii being a much better location than DC?
Yeah, traditionally it is the 89th is more uptight. They are known for being kind of sticklers, wanting to do it a certain way. Like we're the best, a little bit of attitude with it. And Hawaii has traditionally been more laid back, like that aloha mentality. We don't work crazy hours. I don't know how the 89th works. I don't think they work tons of crazy hours either, as far as that goes. But I think that they have been transitioning and becoming more laid back than they used to be. A lot of the old hats have left, and they're trying to build that name. So Paul Zampini definitely would know, being there now. And from what he has said, it is not like, a bunch of hard asses and you got to prove something. But I know I've talked to people 3 years ago that were there, and they steered me away. And that's one of the reasons I went to hunted out for Hickam or Ramstein, because that wasn't my first choice. But I think it's gotten a lot better.
Thanks.
And then how about compared to like Dan Rogers? Because he's not in the 89th, right?
Yeah, he's at Scott flying C-40s. He loves it. They get some longer missions than us, which is cool. He said they still don't fly a ton, so he's got more hours than I do, but not a ton. And he's had to do a couple of. He was like the wing exec too, and so that wasn't his most fun time. But he's loved his squadron and unit. So and the 40 is a great airplane. Like people I talked to that flew the 40, they love it. You're augmented, so you can fly a lot further, do different missions, bigger. You get a lot of out of Scott. You get a lot of senators and congressmen and women that are going to go around the world and do essentially this round robin of stuff, especially when there's new ones coming in or something major going on. So you travel the whole world doing that. We don't do that mainly because we have shorter legs. We have, we're basic, and we can't carry as many people just being smaller.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much. I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. Thank you again.
Yeah. See you guys.
Miss you guys.
Yeah. Miss you.